All right. Welcome to Join the Raid podcast, everyone. I hope you all have been having an amazing Thursday. It has been hot out today, so hopefully you've been staying hydrated. And we're going to be doing a podcast today with the one and only Raider. As always, the host and owner of the podcast. We will be doing a podcast today on school and the education system. Basically, the differences from 70s to now and how it's changed over time. So yeah. So Raider, start off with a quick, easy question right off the bat for you. Have you seen major changes in school education since you've been in school?
Major changes. I saw the first major change when I graduated high school, so in '08, and it went from there to didn't go to school, went to military, and then came out of military, started going back to school again. And I had children at the time, and their schooling. So I saw a big difference in the history standpoint and the
Mm,
math standpoint.
math, yep.
Grammar and English was kind of simple. It was kind of the same, similar builds, but math was the biggest punch in the face that I've seen because they did this thing called Common Core Math now.
Mm,
So it's one of those things I can't grasp. I can't grasp it at all. But I figured it out, but it's just one of those things. It's just fucking stupid
seems
because it's
overcomplicating it.
yeah, it is 100% overcomplicated. Like no matter which way you look at it, and yeah, but I saw a difference that I saw a difference in history because history portions weren't being told; they're being omitted to
Yep.
say. My daughter's her thing was, we learned about slavery. I was like, okay. And I asked her questions about it. So okay, cool. What is your standpoint on that? She's like, oh, slavery's bad. I said, okay, but why?
Mm,
And she said, well, it's not good to make people do things they don't want to do. I was like, that's another valid
reasonable.
reason from a child standpoint. It's very reasonable. And then I looked at her, I was like, okay, cool. When was slavery abolished? She said, what's abolished mean? I was like, you learned about this in school, right? She said, yeah, they just were freed. I was like, but do you know how or
Mm-hmm.
when or how long it took for it to affect the whole nation? She's like, no. So like, okay. I said, let me see your book. And this is about the time, this is pre-COVID. So she's like, oh, we don't have books. It's on our laptop. I'm like, okay, let
Let me
me
see
see your
about that.
laptop so I can look at it. And I looked at it and noticed the pages they're like they're like scanned in. So I was like, okay, cool. Read it, read it, read it, read it, read it. It's like they don't mention things about when slavery was abolished or how it
Really?
started or anything like that, just that slavery was here.
That's weird.
So it kind of made me sit kind of sat the wrong way for me.
Yeah, I would have to agree on that. I mean, I don't remember the exact date it was abolished. I know it was it the 1800s or was it the 1700s? It was 1800s, right? Yeah. But either way, I know that even after it was abolished, they weren't giving all their rights right away. They still had to fight for them later on in the later 1900s for all their rights. And even after, slavery was freed after the Civil War and all that with Abe Lincoln, a lot of the slaves actually, freed men, actually went back to the farms that they lived on all their life because they had no idea where to go. So they basically got a job there, essentially. They just got paid to do the same thing they were doing, just not under slavery. So it's interesting that in school they don't really teach that aspect. So that's
Yeah.
different. It's weird. They should be teaching all the history, not just snippets, essentially.
I mean, I get why certain ages wouldn't get the full range of history to me because there's a lot of input, a lot of data input and teaching. At the age she was in, I think she was in sixth grade. So
Okay,
it
that
was
makes
like
sense.
you should
Sixth grade.
start learning a little bit more because I learned that stuff in fifth and sixth grade just
Mm,
fine, along with like basic social studies and simple things of history like big dates, like just to reference them from big dates. So it was like, okay, cool, not that big of a deal. Then she told me about all her other projects she was doing, and I was like, okay, that's cool. And it came to math, and I said, cool, I'm good at math, not a big deal. And I look at it, I was like, oh yeah, this is the answer. So I tell her to work it out and try to figure it out. And she does this long, drawn out process. And I'm just looking at her like, I know I taught you how to do math. And she's like, oh no, this is how they want us to do it. That takes so long.
Yeah.
If you already know the
Over.
right answer, if you know the right answer already, why are you having to show all this extra work when you could do a simple this here and be done? And she's like, I don't know. My teacher said I had to do it this way. He's like, okay. So what are you how did you I said, you know what, teach me how this works so I can know better.
Mm.
We ran through these math problems about 4 or 5 times. And I said, fuck it. I was like, no, no, we're not doing this bullshit. I was like, remember how I taught you to do math? She said, yeah, do it that way and tell them to fucking call me.
Yeah, they're
That's it.
overcomplicating
No.
things. It's interesting. So, like, can you give it like a small example of that, like a simple math equation, and how they would do that? How were they
Well,
formulating it, really?
I
Because I'm
can't. Off
trying
the
to,
top of my head, I can't.
because I'm trying to think of
Let me
like,
see if I can pull something up right now.
yeah, because I'm thinking, yeah. I was like thinking to myself, I'm like, what? So they're overcomplicating things, process. Because I can understand, like, when you get into more higher forms of math, advanced mathematics, like, algebra 2 is not even that advanced, but it's still way more than like sixth graders mathematics. But either way, you got equations and stuff. Those are not that complicated. You just have to use them to get the answer. But
Yeah. So
it's interesting. It's very interesting because it's like, 5 times 5 times 5, 125. You do 5 times 5, that's 25. Then 25 times 5 is 125. It's not that hard, but well, some people it might be a little difficult, but you're not overcomplicating it, essentially.
so let's talk about your school time.
My school time. Well, like you said, you graduated in 2008, right? I graduated 2012. So far as I know, like I knew the whole math thing was far more complicated and like overcomplicated than it used to be from when I was in class. Because the same thing, it was, I had pre-algebra, algebra 1, geometry, algebra 2. For whatever reason, maybe because I was just lazy is probably what the word would be, but I was in, I think it was a class just called pre-algebra or something, but it was like people that had a hard time understanding math. When in reality, I was actually really good at math. I just didn't care. At the end of the semester or quarter of the year, they realized I shouldn't be in that class, so they put me in geometry and algebra 2 at the same time. So I took those two, and those weren't too bad. But after I graduated, seeing people say that like they take equations and then they just overcomplicated things. You see that a lot in movies today too. What was it? If you've seen The Incredibles 2, the dad was trying to like help their son with like math, and he's like, "Math is math." It's kind of funny, but
Yes.
it's like, why are you
That's
overcomplicating
how
things? You get the
that's
same
how I was,
answer.
man. It's
It
like
shouldn't be made overcomplicated. In some people's minds, it might be easier because each person might perceive math in a different mindset. Like example, it's like you have 4 boxes, and each box has 4 apples. How many apples is there? 4 times 4, 16. But some people might not be able to do the multiplication. They might have to count each individual one. So that's why they created the over complicated like process to make it. They think it might be easier for certain people, and that's my mindset on at least. I don't know, but I didn't really notice, or at least I didn't hear about the history. I assumed English class would be the same. How much you can really change the English class. Science, maybe, depending on what new science has come out to disprove or prove other things, depending on
so
the science class.
science. It hasn't changed that much from the basics because they have their own equations, how they work, and they use those. They build on those. They don't change them. That's
Yeah,
the best thing about sciences, which it should stay the same way with math. Let's not lie about it because they use math in science, but they kind of dropped the ball with math because I guess I don't understand the concept of why they changed it in that way.
yeah. And like Zombie said here, one thing that's changed I noticed as a banker, kids don't know how to sign their names. Not even their parents know. They don't even sign their names in cursive, is what she said. So they come to sign. Yeah, so it's interesting. And then like Satan said they stopped teaching it years back. I noticed that too. Even my schools and here in Massachusetts, they don't teach cursive anymore, which is interesting because a lot of times signatures are supposed to be in cursive, but then now people just do the random squiggly lines and then they're like, that's my signature now. It's like, that's so weird. Cause like in my day to day job, I have to sign stuff in and out because I'm a receiver for my department and I also am the delivery guy. So I bring stuff out. But when I receive the shipments from, every place, at the end of it, you check the inventory, you check everything, and then you sign. So I have to, sign, and I always sign in cursive. It's very interesting that they took that out.
Yeah, I learned cursive in, I want to say, the fourth grade, and they kept teaching it till I hit sixth grade.
Mm,
Can't remember what years those were, but then I got into junior high, and then they said, "Oh yeah, we're not doing cursive anymore." And the only thing going in my head then was, "Why did we have to learn this then?"
hmm
Because we'd all just write our papers in cursive just because we got so used to it for the past couple years.
mm,
And they're like, "Oh no, you had to print," and we just thought it was rude for one because like you made us learn this for no reason, and then we go out in the real world and see people using cursive just fine, and then we see people don't can't read it at the minimum, can't even read it. And I was like, it's kind of one of those things that's kind of simple if you just look at it and see how the letters are articulated, but to each their own. So, let's see here. How old are you now, Savage?
32.
32? Fair. 35 makes sense. So let's go back. Let's go back to how the core classes were. Where were your core classes? The ones you needed to have, not your electives, not your extracurricular activities. Core classes like math, English, science, and history. But mine was also accounting and banking.
Yeah, we didn't
That
have
was
that.
mandatory. Yeah, and so they taught us how to manage balance checkbook, look at the bank account, how to manage it the right way, what's
hmm
in the positive, what's in the negative, and how to write it all up. And it's one of those things that I believe should be fucking taught still to this day.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
There's certain things that should be taught in schools that are not. That's one of them, accounting, and banking. That would help so many people stay out of debt. When I was, coming out of high school myself, I taught myself instead because I was like, I'm the person that's kind of stingy with money. I hold on to it a lot, and then I don't really spend a whole lot all the time. There'll be moments when I go and like, I'll buy something and after, 6 months. I haven't bought anything. I'll look up something and buy it. But usually I make sure that everything else is taken care of. Obviously the bills are always paid. I have money saved in case for a rainy day. I have money saved to buy, like a new condo or house, whatever, if I need to buy a new car, etc. But I think budgeting and accounting and all those kind of things definitely need to be taught in school. It's very important for life. It's like almost like an everyday thing as an adult that should be taught. There's a lot of things in school that are taught that shouldn't really be. I mean, they're only like you said, they're not mandatory, but there's still things in school that are taught that are like, it's nice to know, but you don't need that in a day to day life. Heck, I honestly, as I say, as much as I like math, geometry, unless you're doing specific things in life, you don't need to know geometry that much. There's certain things that you do, but a lot of the time in life, day to day, geometry isn't that crazy important. It's nice to know, especially if you're doing like if you become like a landscaper or like a construction worker, then geometry is really good to know. But for the most part, eh.
Yeah, I get that. Let's talk about elective classes that you had. What electives did you take in high school?
I took a wide mix of classes. Some were just for entertainment. Other times it was just for. There was a few that was for education, but a lot of times it was just like I like the teacher, like to hang out with the teacher, so I take their elective. It wasn't really like, oh, because I wanted to understand this or that. Example, there was a teacher. He was a nice guy, but actually wanted to know like civil law. So it was basically like the laws within your state and laws that were actually across the country. Like, because it varies from state to state. A lot of laws, certain things might be different in your state compared to mine, etc. You have a lot of freedoms with your Second Amendment in Texas, where in Mass you do not. You're kind of actually screwed. There's a huge lawsuit going back and forth right now with that. simply because they're trying to hinge on your Second Amendment rights. But as a younger person, I always was curious about certain laws, so I wanted to know the laws in general. So I took that class. Other times it was like a class I had was with the history teacher. I've talked about it before. He was an awesome dude to hang out with. Like every kid knew him. Everyone loved hanging out with him, but everyone had this joke that he kind of resembled Joseph Stalin. It was an inside joke everyone had in high school. Everyone said it. It was just funny because he had the structure of the face, the body build, and the mustache. It was just something everyone said.
You're just all there.
It was all lining up perfectly for him. But he was one of the nicest teachers you would ever have. If you had a question for anything, he was always willing to help out. He was very good in class. He was still stern. He'd make sure you're actually paying attention in class. He wouldn't let you do whatever you want to do, but he would also make it entertaining. So we had culinary arts. I did that. That wasn't too bad. And some other stuff, art classes and typical stuff like that. What about you though?
My extracurricular, my electives was accounting, uh, home ec. These are at least my senior year because I had more electives than anything that year. Kind of knocked out everything first. Art, and I can't remember what it's called exactly, but it was, I think it was current events, something like that.
Hmm.
So we got world news, everything like that, and how to talk about it, how to transcribe it, and like present it, do presentations on it, and everything like that. So yeah, of course, foreign language. It was Spanish because that's in Texas. That's second language here. So I
Yeah.
learn it.
Yeah, languages are important to learn, even if you're not going to use it. I would say to practice it, even if you're not using it yourself on a daily basis, because then you kind of forget it. That's why to me with Spanish, I took it for 2 years. I had a B plus, so I was doing pretty good. And then I don't remember any of it now because I never used it outside of school. We had two choices for French or Spanish, so it was interesting.
So, and I did take my home ec because I saw the comment. Home ec included sewing. It included everything with it. So,
Okay,
yeah. So that's how I actually had to learn how to sew before that from my grandma.
that's pretty
Things that
interesting.
get taught at home. What about your extracurricular activities?
Extracurricular
Did you do
activities.
did you do like, we have here UIL, and it's like, team-based extracurricular activities for knowledge. So like what is it called? Like fuck, I had this in my head. But there are things like, debate teams, things like that, like
Okay,
mathletes, things like,
I didn't the stuff that you would take like after school, basically, like afternoon
yeah.
classes.
Yeah.
I didn't take any. I was more of a believe it or not, I was more of a like a sporty person back in high school. Like I enjoyed playing the sports more so than I do enjoy watching it. Because as you know, I barely watch sports, but I enjoyed playing it. So a lot of times I played baseball for 5 years and I did soccer. I guess those would count as extracurricular activities. And then you would have like gym kind of activities after too. So you had dodgeball and stuff like that if you want to do that kind of stuff. Anything else? Like anything? Try to remember if I took anything for like specifically for like or like English or history. I don't think so. I didn't really have anything else besides like sporty, like more athletic kind of things outside of school.
Okay. So we have a question in the YouTube chat. We're gonna pull it up.
Mm.
Even if we don't all become engineers, doesn't learning how to think spatially help with logic and problem solving? Technically,
Mm.
yes, it does. It's one of those things that most people tend to forget about because there's other ways of actually getting to that point of learning to talk, and think logically. But I believe that geometry does have a space for that. So yeah, thanks, Vish. I appreciate that.
Yeah, good. That's good.
There we go. Screen was locked up. Any more questions that we missed? Nope.
Let's say Toker on the Twitch side of things.
Go ahead and send it.
I was just saying, I had a college prep class
Oh,
in high school that taught you how to do your finances, like balancing your checkbooks and such. So couldn't that be like certain areas get certain criteria to get taught? Yeah, that's what we're like
yeah,
kind of getting
it
to
could.
essentially. Yeah.
So for me in high school, they had these college prep classes. that did nursing, welding, you can do workforce. So you go to school half a day, then you'd go work for the other half day. You make a paycheck and everything like that. You just had to get your docket or whatever signed by your employer every week saying that you were going there and you
Hmm.
were there and everything like that. You weren't skipping out on it. And I think that was probably some of the most beneficial things for people that knew already they didn't want to go to college, just want to join the workforce. They just so they can get their feet wet and learn how different aspects work and how, working on a job actually, like, the responsibility of the job itself and learning if it's right for them at the moment or not before they actually
Hmm.
have to do it, you know? So yeah, I like college prep class like that in high school. I do. I'm seeing a lot less of them nowadays though, for
Yeah.
some reason.
My English teacher in senior year was actually doing a lot of college prep for us. He would have us take vocabulary tests like every week, and he would just help us out with like things that to be prepared for college. Essentially, it was he was a good guy, some teacher, because he actually put in a lot of extra effort
That's
teaching
awesome.
people.
So I had a teacher like that too. Her name was Miss Turntine. He rolled our asses about
Mm,
everything when it came to college prep. She's like, Did you take your test? Did you apply to these schools? Did you get a letter from them saying they're interested in you? Everything like that. And if we had anything for it, she got it done for us ASAP. She wasn't like some of these other school counselors and everything like that, or career counselors where they sit on it for a while. She made sure that we had every aspect of what we needed, and if she didn't know the answer, she went and found it for you. So so you were set up for success. So I know a lot of schools aren't like that, which I'm learning from meeting a lot of different people, and they didn't have that kind of support like in school and everything like that, which sucks. But it's one of those things that hopefully hopefully one day everything gets to be at an equal level across the board.
mm,
Officer Fig said, main thing that gets me, and just from talking to you guys, the guys I work with, the Spanish we learn in school is not the same kind of Spanish that you would near here from Mexico. That's true.
mm-hmm,
There's a lot of slang. There's a lot of different variations of it. So it's one of those things that it doesn't transcend each other. It doesn't,
mm-hmm.
help each other. So, but at least the basics of it, so you can kind of break down the conversation as much as you possibly can until you need somebody else there to come in and translate it. But yeah,
Yeah.
was there ever a subject you thought was pointless at first, but later saw value in?
Mm.
I think for me, it would have been no lie English. Because I never thought I'd get critiqued so much in grammar or anything like that in my entire life until I
Mm.
went and worked for AbbVie, and
Okay.
we had to write up our we had to write up our reports, and they told us at first, "Yeah, just write it all down. It'll be good. You're good to go." And I sent them in.
Okay.
5 minutes later, sent back, kicked back to me. They asked me, "Like, where'd you go to school?" I was like, "Shit." I was like, "Here." It's like, "You have a master's degree, right?" Yes. It's like, "Well, use it." I was like,
Yeah.
"Gotcha."
So they wanted like an
Uh,
actual like a proper essay, basically, like
Yeah, they want a proper report,
report.
everything done correctly, grammar, everything like that. Well, I didn't know at the time, but everything goes through reviews through the legal team too.
Okay.
Every
Yep.
single aspect of it goes to review them. So they're like, it
Yeah.
has to be up to snuff. And I didn't know
Perfect.
that. They just
Yeah.
said, the person that trained me just told me, yeah,
Send
man,
it
just
in.
write it down, just send it in. That's all I need. Just the details. Don't have to explain anything else, man.
It's probably like, don't take it so
Yeah.
literal.
Yeah. It was a fantastic fucking first month. That's all I'm telling you.
Yeah, I remember you talking about the office life is not for you. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there was anything for me that like a class that I took that I just thought was pointless to have. I mean, I would say actually, as much as I love drawing, I would think art would be kind of pointless back then, and then I kind of saw value in it afterwards. But at first, I knew how to draw already. Like I'm pretty good at it. And then when I was taking the class, it was kind of the boring stuff. It was like stuff that I kind of knew. It was like basic stuff, like learning steps, and I'm like sitting there and I'm like, okay, this is stupid. But then I kind of appreciated it a little bit because it gives you more, even if you know how to do it, it's good to go over the basics again because then it kind of strengthens your basis and like the foundation. So once you're strengthening your foundation, the rest of it gets good with it or gets better with it. But I haven't drawn in years now, but I used to draw all the time. And it'd be from tattoo ideas to skulls and dragons and stuff like that. And stuff that I found it interesting and concepts, ideas. But I would say, yeah, art would probably be up there.
Sidebar: do you
Mm.
have any tattoos?
Yeah, I have the one that's hard to show on screen, but yeah,
Okay.
I have. That's not something I drew, but I do have a tattoo. I don't know, tattoo idea. It's actually a dream catcher, but it's stored away somewhere, so I don't have it out. But yeah.
Yes, Satan, I am showing off your Smurf. But yeah. Let's talk about this. There's another class I missed, computer skills class, which
That's good.
nowadays kids don't need that anymore because they have computers in every goddamn class, obviously now.
Yeah.
So they're already set for that. So I was glad I took it when I did in high school because it got me a leg up in knowing the basics of Microsoft, the basics of Excel, everything like that. Because I learned that mostly almost nobody knows how to run Excel the right way. So it's one of those things that I'm like, I'm so glad I took this class because it just
I'm
sounds
yeah.
good.
Yeah, I get as I say, I get that. It is good to take those classes. I'm not gonna lie. I probably don't know how to use it, but I usually I'm pretty good at adapting and learning things pretty quickly. So computer stuff like that I could probably learn pretty easily. I just never really used it outside of school, so that's probably why I don't remember how to do it. But usually I tend to kind of learn things on the fly. It's kind of like how when I took apart my PC, I didn't really know what I was doing, and I watched a 15-minute video, and then it just took me another 20 minutes just to get it done. So I guess learning is really good to, especially for like you said, everything is technology today. So I would say it's definitely a must, especially for today, since everything is so technology driven.
Yeah, I agree with that. Another class we missed, health and sex ed.
Mm,
What was part of the curriculum when you took it, or if you did take it, and how was it handled? Was it co-ed? Was it not co-ed?
mm. Um, when I took sex ed, basically they just taught you the human anatomy, and then they would go into more depth of like safe sex in general. So using protection and what not to do, what to do, that kind of thing. It was a female teacher. It was only just her. There was no anyone else, and I'm trying to remember the rest of the class. I vaguely remember it, to be honest, but it was just the basics essentially. It wasn't going into too much depth, but it basically taught you to be smart, be safe, because there's a lot of things that can go wrong, especially when you're a young kid and hormones are at a crazy level and you're just wanting to have the crazy amount of sex.
Yeah. So ours was co-ed. It was taught by our high school football coaches.
Football
Mainly
coaches.
coach. Yeah, mainly Coach Clark. Man,
Wow,
this man just fucking
Jesus.
nonchalant about everything. He come in there. He's like, "All right, y'all know what this is?" And he pull up a condom, and we're like, "Yeah." He's like, "Cool. You know how to use it?" And we're like, I looked around. I was like, "You just put it on." And he's like, all right, come on. This is what we're gonna do." And we all know Coach Clark so much, and he's like, he's gonna embarrass one of us no matter what. And he gets my buddy Lane, and he's like, "Lane, come up here." And he just goes up there. He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "All right, show me how to put this on the right way." The props next to him, and Lane is just, thinking, "You want me to just drop right now in front of everybody and put it on?" Lane goes like this. He just stops. He's like, "Yo, what the fuck you doing?" That right there, the prop. Show it on the prop, not yourself. And he's just he's just over here like that makes sense. So we laugh, we have a good laugh about it. The health class was lighthearted for us, because he knew most of us, like on a personal level. He's one of those coaches that just knew all of us, so he knew all of our personal shit, and he didn't tell anybody. And so he knew who knew how to use it. He knew, like, he knew who was going to be a dad. So he just walked us through it. Like, this is how you use it. This helps. It does not stop you. He looked at us all like, does not stop you from getting pregnant. Just letting you know that.
Mm.
It's
Yeah,
just
it's
it
not 100%.
prevents it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're like, okay. So yeah, it was a nice lighthearted class. We actually learned a good bit in that class, even though we don't want to admit it because it was mostly fun for us. So it was nice. The way it is now, I heard, like corruptions to point out, they separate them now. Males and females go to different areas for that now, and they have different classes for it now,
Interesting.
which I kind of understand from the perspective of some people get embarrassed being around other people if they don't understand sex in the first place.
Especially if it's the
But
different opposite sex, yeah.
yeah, so it's one of those things that I think it's I think it's good. I think it's a good thing to separate them, in my opinion, for that because there's a lot of questions some young boys won't ask because there's girls in the class, and then same thing with some girls they won't ask because there's guys in the class because they're like, I don't want
Mhm.
to be embarrassed. I don't want to be pointed out by this, that, and the other. Yeah.
Same lane you told me about. So what does it mean by that? So question, same lane you told me about, question mark.
I have no idea what that means. Yes. Yes, same lane I talk about all the time. Yes, like I said, he's a 100% goofball. I will.
Oh, that's
How
interesting.
long was how long is your typical school year? So it goes August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June. So 10 months plus a little bit.
Something like
10
that, yeah.
months till 10 months till 11 months. It matters where you are when you start because they all start different times. In Texas, we start in August. In some places I've seen them start in September.
Mhm.
So it all varies. And then all these random school breaks in the middle that I don't understand. You about 10 and a half months. It's about the same for you.
Yeah, pretty much. It was pretty much the same. Like you said, start like, I think it was, like, either halfway through August or the end of August, and then goes all the way till almost the end of June. And it depended on too, like, if too many days were, like, canceled because of the weather, snowstorms or something, too many days added up, they'll actually add days towards the end of the year to kinda make up for it.
So
That's that's
how
wild
much
corruption.
how much homework did you normally have nightly?
Homework. Yeah, I had, plenty of homework. Almost every class had homework for me, especially the 4 mandatory ones, like the major ones, math, English, history, and then science. They usually had homework, some more than others. Like math usually had a good amount because you always wanted to be taught different, like, things, like whatever equation you were being taught that day, they kinda gave you a bunch of, like, different variables into the equation to see what answers you would get and how you would solve it and all that stuff. But yeah, it was homework. That was actually one of the few things I actually did most around the year because a lot of people just skip doing homework. But I learned that if you did all your homework, you would actually pass. At least in my school, all the classes you would pass with like at least a C if you did all your homework. So I always just did my homework, and then after that, I wasn't much of a studying person. I didn't really sit down and just study the same thing over and over again. Like I just learned the stuff and then went for it, and it worked out for me. I mean, the only time I actually really tried the hardest is senior year, and that's when I got into the high honor roll. Besides that, I usually just pass with C's and B's.
Okay. Okay. So mine differed. Of course, your main core class, math, English, history, science. We had homework in them usually nightly or every other night, or
Mhm.
every night we had one from each of them. And it was a decent amount. It was manageable. It was 100% manageable. So it wasn't anything that was like going to take you hours on end to do.
Yeah, typically an
Most
hour
time
to
in
2.
school, Yeah, most time in school they gave us, plenty of time to teach. They taught us plenty in school. Then we just have to apply what they taught us to make it easy. But yeah, it's pretty simple, pretty easy. And yeah, and especially for me, I did all this. I did as many sports as I could. That shortening my time frame after school was one of those things that taught me how to manage and be very good with time management.
Mm,
After football practice, sometimes you wouldn't get out till 8 sometimes, go home, shower, do your homework, eat something, and then go to bed and wake up and do it all over again. So it kind of built me in the structure of I get off practice, go do this, go do this, go do this, go do this, and it kind of built me in that line of structure so I could always have good time management skills
mm. Yeah,
until it came to writing the damn paper.
when it comes to stuff like in school, I'm more of a hands-on kind of person, so I like to learn things when doing like an example for jobs. Like when I'm doing the job, I like to learn it hands-on more than just like reading a book about it. I like to experience it firsthand, and I learn quicker that way, a lot better, more efficiently that way than just reading a book and flipping. Because I get so bored with it. It just drains. Like takes every fiber of my being to do it. Like the example is when I was telling you about the drone stuff. I was looking into the getting my license for FAA droning, so you can do commercial stuff. Or I can do whatever, basically essentially make money using my drone if I wanted to. And when I did it, I read through everything within 2 hours, and there was a bunch of stuff to go through. Like at least like I think there was like 200 pages worth of information, and then they give you a practice test. And when did it within 2 hours, I was kind of getting like the highlights of everything, skimming through it. And then when I took the test, I got an 88 on it, so I was doing pretty good. But it takes a lot of effort for me, at least. And each person's different. Some people might enjoy actually just going through the everything, reading it all, and then writing down the books. And like you have a very logical sense approach to it. You're very organized, you're very tactical about your stuff. So where I'm a procrastinator. Through and through, I'm a procrastinator, last second kind of person. And I know that bothers you. So we're opposite thresholds here. Like you're at this end of the spectrum, I'm on this end. But I always get the stuff done. I'm more of a hands-on kind of person. So that's how I go
Yeah.
through a lot of life, essentially.
Yeah, I can't be that way, dog. Like, no fucking way. Like, I could
You're probably
try
like,
my best.
ah.
I could try my best to, as I try, but I would crack so fucking fast and be like, nope, can't do this. Which way do I start first? Where I go in the middle, where I go in, and I have to figure it out, and then I got to do it in that order. It's almost like a compulsion. So,
Yeah.
you
It's
know,
good to have. It's a good habit to have. And I think the way I do things, I like it because it kind of forces me to learn the stuff. It makes me focus my mind. Where it's reading a book, I kind of just days off. I'm like, yep. And I'm just kind of like trying to not distract myself with like, I put my cell phone away so that when I'm looking at that, or, I take my tabs down from Twitch so I'm not watching videos. Because then otherwise I got easily distracted from other things. So where it's like hands-on approach for me, it's a lot easier to learn through that approach. Everyone has their own way of doing things.
we have a question from Vish again on YouTube. I'm gonna pull that up. With all the tech in classrooms now, do you think we're teaching kids how to think or just what to click?
Mm.
I think it's a little bit of both. Because kids have the access of the internet, AI, everything going on in the world at their fingertips now, and most people, especially like which I learned my age and older, have no idea how to keep them from accessing all those points of information. So it's one of those things that it's a double-edged sword. Like they're going to learn more, but
Hmm.
what are they going to learn more of?
And what are
And
they? Mm.
how do you justify letting them have so much access to it?
Hmm. Yeah, and it's like, and how much they're gonna retain? Because you can learn a bunch of stuff, but are you gonna retain that knowledge, that information? Because it's like with technology, it kind of makes it easier with everything, especially with the AI, GBT chat. That makes everything so much easier and convenient for people. You don't have to put in as much effort. You don't have to like, yeah, there's certain things you still have to do yourself, but it takes that. and brings it down to such an easier level for everyone to get through. They can do so many more things with it, and they don't have to really learn the skills needed to do that. And then it makes it just kind of like same with like YouTube, just simple things like everything I learned how to take care of my PC, take it apart, and all that. I just looked it up on YouTube, and then half of it I still remember, and the other half I'll have to look up again if I need to change something, certain things. I always rewatch something anyways, just in case, just to make sure I do it right, because it's very, very precise nature when you're taking part of like a CPU. The chip itself is very delicate. All the little threads on it, it's ridiculously delicate. And then, motherboards are pretty easy to pop in, but you could still damage that. Taking out a PSU unit, power supply unit, that's also I would say that's more physically demanding only because there's so many things attached to the PSU itself. So you got to remember
Yeah,
where
because
each slot
it's
goes.
awkward. It's awkward,
Yeah,
honestly.
it's an awkward compartment. You got to pull it out. Remember each place that is connected. Otherwise, you could fuck up something pretty easily. Mhm. But overall, I think to me personally, I think technology is making people a little bit too lazy because they abuse what is given to them instead of only using it in a more delicate way. I guess the word would be. They just kind of just use it all the time, and it kind of makes people dumber in a sense.
I mean, to my standpoint, technology is supposed to be a tool, not supposed to be something you rely on to be dependent on.
Exactly.
Which I catch myself with this before, somebody in the background says this, but I rely the fuck off of it. I do. And I do have my own thought
Yeah.
process of thinking though. And it's one of those things that, you know, I'm fine without it. I actually am. It's just the fact of the detachment of it and learning that I don't need to do this. I don't need to check this. I don't need to go here or anything like that. But at the moment, I kind of need it. So it's kind of one of those double-edged swords, and it sucks.
Yeah, it's definitely a double-edged sword. Like you said, it's a tool to be used, but you should abuse it. It's definitely helpful in a lot of ways and definitely detrimental in other ways. And I think as time goes on, it kind of makes, especially with like kids that are growing up, they're easily susceptible to it. So they grow up and then as they're like 5 or 6 years old, I see 6-year-olds playing with iPads and stuff. I'm like, that's way too young for like, I personally think it, but a lot of the times, parents like to do that to kind of distract the kids, to keep them in like place instead of, destroying the house or whatnot.
I mean, it's a free babysitter most of the time for them. They just
Yeah,
hand
sure.
them the damn tablet, and then the kid's preoccupied. So most people don't see the harm in that, but there's a lot that goes into that. Kids
Yeah.
learn to be more comfortable with the tablet than other people, things
Yeah.
like that. So no socialization skills because they're so used to looking
Hmm.
at the screen than doing anything else.
Yeah. Yep.
So it's one of those things that is it a
Double-edged
good
sword.
little distraction just in case, every once in a while, I think should be okay? Sure. Not gonna be super harmful, but every fucking day just needs to cut that. So, Vish has another standpoint. I
Okay.
don't think this is a question. But soon as they face a flood of data media AI news without logic, they can't tell the truth from noise, reasoning skills to help them analyze, not just absorb. It's true. They don't know how to analyze it. They don't know how to filter out the noise from the
Hmm.
facts or know how to fact check. Actually, most people don't know. Most people don't know how to fact check things they see on the internet, social media. One of my buddies messaged me one day and said, "Look at this girl. She's so hot." I was like, "Are you sure that's not AI?" And he's like, "No, they're not." I was like, "Send me where you got this." And I go to it and I scroll down on the bottom of it. You see a tag, AI generated. And I'm just like, "Hey, bro, here's the whole picture." And I said, circled it for him. I was like, "Look at this." He's like, "Wow."
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, I see it.
Mm,
But yeah, it's one of those things I just don't grasp most of the time how people can't differentiate between AI and real life anymore.
and it's
AI
getting
is getting really
scary.
realistic. It's getting
Yeah,
good. It's getting fucking
I
good.
keep seeing it every day. You know, I keep seeing. I kind of I watch it because it's comical. I know it's fake, but it's just comical. It's like the Sasquatch videos now. I keep seeing like Sasquatch like AI generated videos, and he'd be running through the wood. What up, y'all? We're doing today on a journey, and this honeycomb is really good. And it's just he's eating the honeycomb. Now he's being chased by hornets, and it's so ridiculous. But AI is getting crazy realistic because what they do is not only is they using AI generated stuff, but they're going through like Chat GPT, so they have it generate like a whole like segment for like a video, not just like a picture. So it's getting out of hand, I think, because at some point where it's going to be comical now, it's going to be too realistic for, like you said, a lot of people won't be able to see the difference between real and fake. You're going to see something and you're going to be like, oh my God, this person did that. And then it turns out to be fake. And then, 10,000 people are already saying what the fake image or video was real when it's not.
That is true. That is true. All right, let's get back on the school subject.
Yep, it's cool.
One of the things that's changed a whole lot in schools from when I was in school to today is the difference in discipline and
Mm.
this thing called, which most people don't know, called corporal punishment. Do you know what that means?
I can guess what it means, but we didn't have corporate punishment, but we had discipline in my school at least. The schools in like the next state over doesn't anymore. The next town over, they're pretty bad now. They're like the teachers themselves just don't care. They don't give any effort into like keeping the students like responsible for their actions essentially. And they just let them do whatever they want to do and just gets out of hand real quick. Whereas in my time in high school, if you did something inappropriate or did something bad, they would, give you a warning, and then, if you kept doing the same thing or weren't listening, then they'd send you to the principal's office, stuff like that. So that was kind of like how my school was kind of treated, but I don't know how they did it in yours. It might have been different.
So in mine, they had corporal punishment. Is a way they send home a waiver the first day of school, and it's a note to your parents basically your parents signing over the right saying that we have the permission to whoop your child's ass respectfully if they misbehave or act out and break any rules. It's 3
Okay.
swats with a paddle. It's not anything crazy.
Mm.
Are there loopholes? Yes, there are.
Of course.
Everybody thinks they see is three swats with a paddle each day. It's per period.
Period.
So
Wow.
if you're a jackass all day long through school,
Mm.
you're getting 3 swats all day long.
I,
And
I, I,
we
hmm. Okay, go ahead. Go
and
ahead.
we and it was one of those things. And I'm Southern raised, so we believe in discipline at home. Like, when it comes to physical aspects of things, yes, some people have different standpoints on that, but if you don't take it too far, it's effective. So we get our ass whooped at school. Our parents would get notified about it. For us, we go to football practice. We get ready to go home, thinking we're good. Get home, get your ass whooped at home. So, it was a two-part lesson. Some people didn't do that. Some people it did happen. So it's, I like the idea of corporal punishment because it makes the child that's in school know there's repercussions to every action.
Okay.
Like, they're not there to beat the hell out of you. They're there to discipline you, make sure you know you did wrong. Now go back
Yeah.
to school and go do your work. It
Yeah.
wasn't that thing that they did it and you had time out, you just went back to school, like nothing ever happened, and you just keep going and do what you're supposed to do. We had a class clown in a couple of our classes. Nope, I'm not gonna mention names, but he thought it'd be funny to piss off one of my favorite history teachers.
Mm.
And she had this thing about her. She'd tell you guys out in the hall, close the door. They asked another teacher to come out there to witness it to make sure it's not too much, but make sure it's firm but fair across the board. You know how I am about that. So they did that. Well, he'd do this every fucking day, man, just to piss her off and he'd tread that line of breaking the rule and not breaking the rule. And then one day he said, fuck it. And he did it. And she was waiting on it. She told him to come outside. He was like, fine, 3 swats. He's like, 3 swats for old lady? You can't do nothing to me. Oh, he forgot something. She's a tough old lady. She's been there for years. She's taught my mother. That's how long she's been there.
Wow.
And my mom's first rule was when I go there, it's like, if you get her, don't act up. It's all I'm warning you.
Mm.
That was it. So we're good. And you see her because you see through the glass door, you see her walk backwards and take her shoes off. And we're just like, what the fuck's going on? And she runs down the hall for the first lick and just swats his ass. And you see him lift up in the air. And we're like, so I was like, yep, don't piss her off. Got you. And he thought he was done. He thought he was fucking done with that.
I want to teach you
But no.
today.
He said, and she's like, all right, you got 2 more. He looked back. I can't say for a fact this is what he said, but it sounded like he said, fuck no, I don't. And she said, yes, you do. And he's like, fuck. He took 2 more like that. He came back, tried to sit down, couldn't sit down, could not sit down. And I was like, the rest of the year, he was a perfect fucking angel.
Oh yeah, you
So
probably
I was like,
remembered that. Yeah.
oh yeah.
Dis-
Yeah, and the
discipline
best thing
works.
is like nowadays, like they see each other all the time and they're like good neighbors, everything like that, super
Yeah.
respectful, and it's like, wow, that's fantastic. But yeah, man, I believe corporal punishment should be in schools if the parents allow it, of course, and as long as there's, firm but fair mindset on it.
Yeah. I agree
But that's just
100%.
me.
I agree. Discipline when needed shouldn't be abused, obviously, and all that. We can all agree on that. Um, but yeah, for us, that didn't exist in my school. I think that was more of a private school, or like religious schools essentially had those, but we didn't have that. At least I never saw it. So I heard about it, but I just never seen it.
Well, I was a public school in Texas, man. So it's just
Yeah.
public. That's it. It wasn't a private or anything like that. There weren't many private schools around our area. And they just treated every kid the same. Nobody got special treatment, nothing like that. So it was just a good environment to be in. It was a good, healthy environment to be in
Yeah.
for nurturing children and their minds. Let's talk about teaching and learning, teaching styles and learning environments in school.
Mm.
How did your teachers run their classrooms? Was it lectures, group work, or something else completely?
It's actually a mix. It all depended on the teacher. Each teacher had their own style, we'll call it. Math, we always did. It was always like a lecture. Miss Roberts, she was the Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2 teacher. So if you had calculus, it was someone else. But for her, I had her. And she always just taught in lectures. She showed on the chalkboard or the marker board and just write it out. And then this is the equation. Here's some examples, yada, yada, yada. Here's some practice runs. Try it out. If you have any questions, let me know. Pretty cut and dry, but she got to the point and got the job done. Science classes are more group classes. You would be in a group, you get partners, whatnot. History, Mr. What was his name? Wow, I'm forgetting his name right now. I'm drawing a blank. But he would just kind of talk to you and kind of give it like it was a lecture, but in his own style. He make it interesting to listen to. He would give
Okay.
you like little like tidbits of information about like this person. He wouldn't just say, George Washington did this, but he'd also give you like unique, interesting like information about George Washington. Did you know about this that he did, or this, etc. Where he was, a lot of history books will tell you where they're born. Cool, but then they'll tell you like maybe hobbies or things they did before they were known. Stuff like that is interesting. You'd always make it very entertaining because he made kind of jokes as well, so we'd always be laughing. So I think it's good to have some kind of style that makes you unique and kind of draws in the crowd. You kind of want to be a little entertaining, not like you're not 100% entertainer, but you kind of want to draw the crowd's attention to you so that way they stay hooked onto you. Because if you're just cut and dry, then people might just get, bored and kind of just daze off into a dream or whatever.
Yeah. You want that engagement.
Yeah. What about you?
So for me, mine differed. The one that sticks out to me the most is probably Mr. Trailer. He was our world history teacher, and he had all of us, and we were class clowns. I'm not even gonna lie about it. We were fucking class clowns, all the football team basically together in one classroom. So, he made it entertaining. He taught us so much. And his standpoint was, not just look it up yourself, but was telling us the stories behind each. Like, he'd go in
Yeah.
depth and tell us things. Like, and we loved movies like Gladiator, or The Patriot, things like that. And he referenced things like that. And he's like, okay, this is what this movie is actually based off of. And we like, oh, we saw that shit. And he's like, yeah, so this is how it happened. And he'd lock us in instantly as soon as he first started talking, and there was no bullshitting in his class. We just enjoyed it so much.
Mm.
And then I think at the end of the semester, he's like, all right, we're going to write a paper. You need to pick which time period you want to be a part of to write about. And almost all of us chose the American Revolution because it's right when I think The Patriot just came out, and we watched it so many times. So we were just about that, and everything he taught us just so in depth. And I don't think a single person failed that class. I think we all had high A's in that class just because his teaching style and just because how he kept us engaged, asking us questions. How do you feel about this? What do you think is wrong about this? How do we actually, how did we get from here to here in your own, standpoint? And we tell us our standpoint, and he tells us like, you're not wrong 100%, but you forgot this fact and this fact and this fact, and he tells stories about each one of them because he's a well-traveled man himself, so he went to these locations. He's actually seen it. He's actually seen the history and everything like that, and he'd pull it up for us to watch and see it. So he was engaging. He didn't just lecture us. He's like, I want to have a conversation with you kids, and so y'all understand that you need to know your history. You
Yeah.
need to know this. So yeah. But yeah. Before we move on, before we get too far away from the discipline aspect of it, they said discipline's always gentle. How do kids learn that real life consequences are not always kind or soft? That's the thing, Viz. I never said anything about gentle discipline. I said firm but fair because there's a difference between going over and going under, but being in the middle is learning that. And most people don't know how to actually be in the middle. Some people do too much yelling, some people do too much physical. So it's actually keeping people on the track to understand that, discipline should not be gentle. It really shouldn't be.
Mm.
But that's just my standpoint on it. But yeah,
Add
I think at the basic minimum, they should teach like normalized financial guidance in
financial
some way, shape,
guidance.
or form. Because that's something every single person actually needs to know how to do when they leave school to go out in the real world, you know?
Financial literacy. Okay. Yeah, I think. I mean, for me, it would be a kind of like a crash course on like survival. Like if you're basic survival stuff, how to start a basic fire, how to even like if it's basic how to hunt something, how to capture something, how to hunt. Basic necessities to life in general. Like in case you're stuck in, you go out camping and you get stuck in the full wilderness. It might be not a day to day basis, but it's still a valuable thing to learn. But yeah, I think this stuff like that, reading the stars, that would be an interesting thing to teach children because as big as it's not that big of a deal today because a lot of this time you won't even see stars nowadays unless it's like the North Star. That's the brightest one, obviously, that shines the most, but there's a lot more stars out there than you would realize. As I go like further south, there's a lot less sky pollution, so there's a lot more stars out that way, and it's nice to see. It'd be a nice thing to know where you're at in general when you're lost. So I think that would be cool to have as a class for everyone to have.
So I have to disagree with you. I believe that stuff should be taught actually at home
Mm,
by parents,
okay.
by family. So one, they learn that it's not just something that might be a skill, they learn it's something useful. A lot of people don't do real camping anymore. They do this glamping shit, and it drives me fucking up a goddamn wall.
Oh yeah.
To each their own, but it's just one of those things like learning how to start a fire, learning, how to use flint and steel. Those are
Mm,
things that I learned from like 5 years old enough. You know, I know a lot of people don't have that advantage to learn that stuff, but I think that should be taught at home so children can actually appreciate it the right way. But yeah, that's my standpoint on that. Because most survival things, if they teach it at school, most kids, like if you think of most kids, they kind of goes in one year, keep it for the what they need to know for, and goes away.
Yeah, that's true, especially in school. So that
That's the
makes
reason.
sense.
That's the reason why I think that way. But there's another one in the chat from Satan herself. Let's see if it pops up in the main menu here. We did not. So we're gonna read it off. Basic life skills class. Run down on things you need to run a house, run a house and life comfortably without struggling to understand it. I agree with
Mm,
that. Some people don't know the simplest things because their households are different. Is because they see how it works for their mom and dad, or their mom or their dad, however they live. They think that's normal. I think they should know that, there's a way to manage a house, whether it's learning how to clean properly and learn how to maintain things and learning how to do simple little mechanical work around the house that you don't need to go pay a shit ton of money for when you can just do it yourself.
yeah.
Folding laundry, doing laundry, actually doing laundry. 'Cause I didn't know this, but I didn't know so many people didn't know how to fucking use a damn washer or dryer.
Mm,
That is wild. But, it just throws me off that something simple like that because again, I grew up different. I learned that a couple of while ago. I had to do laundry, I had to wash dishes, I had to fold laundry, and I had to do a lot of the stuff with helping my mom with maintaining stuff like plumbing and doing roofing, things like that. Most people don't even know how to do some of those simplest of those skills. So yeah, back to you, sir.
to me, huh? Yeah. Let's see. We do have a question here. It's like from
But
Bless Got Next. Pin it there.
how about a class about coping with mental health?
Hmm. It'd be
Okay,
complex.
this is kind of a complex question, especially for children on
Mm-hmm.
certain aspects of it, because there's a lot of adults that can't even do this.
Mm-hmm.
But I like the mindset behind that, but the execution of it's going to be so difficult because every child is trying to learn their own emotions on top of everything else. So how do you know what's emotional distress and what's the mental health crisis? Yes,
Mm-hmm.
certain ones look like, night and day, but sometimes they mix together and they don't know if it's just a child learning if they need to control their emotions a little bit better or learn how to, or, what I used to tell my daughter it was big feelings, because she didn't understand it at the time of like, why she was sad or why she was upset or anything like that. That doesn't mean there's a mental health problem. It means she needs to actually figure out how to cope with that herself and realize that it's not a bad thing that she's having those feelings. It's just she needs to learn to get through them the right way in a positive way.
Mm. Yeah. Each kid is going to be unique in their own situation, so it's not always going to be the same. So it's going to be hard to create a class to really teach them how to handle that kind of trauma or emotion that they're dealing with at the time. Some are going to have, traumatic events that they could be helped by their own parents. I mean, hopefully, parents are going to be there able to be there and actually support their child to deal with those traumas or to deal with those emotions that they're feeling at that time. And not every kid is going to be able to deal with it the same way. And then if you want to go basic, then though you can be, find your group of friends or find people that you can connect with that you can have these conversations with, and usually that can, for a kid at younger ages, could be your parents. But it's also good to have friends, but not every kid is to have that kind of emotional support group. So it's kind of like you said, it's a very complicated topic to put into like a class perspective. But yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Uh, Hope that answers yourself a little and just helps get you some guidance and answers there for you, Black. But yeah, it's one of those things that I can't fully get behind that because there's so many ins and outs that people don't understand with certain mental health and you just dealing with simple emotions like happy,
Hmm.
sad, upset, things like that. Just, learning those emotions for children is such a big part of their life that it's an ongoing thing that keeps going to their adults. That's why. Do I believe some mental health training could be effective at that age? Sure. but I think that's going to go more into the line of coping mechanism for emotions than mental health, honestly. Are there any specific subjects you think are falling short today, like in school?
Definitely.
Well,
To
name a
be
few.
honest, I think to be honest, most of them are. Even I, this is probably just me as a personal problem, but like even for me, where it's like pronunciation of words and spelling of words for English, but that's just me in general. But I've noticed that a major thing is science can be an issue, but I think it's more so math and history that is a major issue currently. I've seen plenty of examples. People don't even know their own history for their country. So obviously, if you're American, a lot of the times you would ask them, who was the first president of the United States? Everyone should know that. Everyone, George Washington,
Yes.
right off the
Yes.
back. Should be
George
pretty simple,
Washington.
easy. I can understand if you don't know specific ones, who was the 37th president. I'm not going to know that. But there's certain ones like that you should know that are pretty historically more relevant than other ones. George Washington, Abe
Yes.
Lincoln, John F. Kennedy, people like that. You're gonna know them specifically because they're pinnacle moments in U.S. history, essentially. But not only that, but a lot of the history that is taught in school isn't either some of it's inaccurate or some is not actually just taught in general. A big part of that is like the Native Americans, what happened. There was a lot of misconceptions on what happens. Most of it wasn't just me being Native American myself. I've actually done a lot of research on it, but a lot of people, either say it's genocide or not. It's leaning more towards it wasn't really genocide for a vast majority. It was actually accidental. They were given when like the flu came in, the smallpox came in and started wiping them out. People didn't really know, those kind of things would affect people that didn't have a immune system to it. It'd be compromising to them and it'd wipe them out. And it started taking out populations like crazy. But then started, you know, later on, people realized that was happening and they actually used it to get to what they wanted. But other historic events as well, throughout history, like you said before, earlier in the stream, we talked about slavery. After, after the slaves were freed, a lot of them just stayed where they were. People were just, a lot of the kids today were just like, oh, they were freed. That was it. And then they became, they're good. They're happy. No, it's more complex than that. It expanded for another 100 years plus that a lot of things happened that were needed to be fixed. And it took a while for that to be fixed. So history is a big one. Now mathematics, I see that on a day-to-day basis. People don't know simple math and that's a huge problem. Like everyone should know the basic math. I'm not asking you to understand calculus, but you should understand basic algebra. Even to algebra 2 should be quite knowledgeable for everyone, but I've seen people not understanding like what is a quarter, a dime, and 2 pennies worth. Like how much is
Yeah.
this? And you're like, that's 37 cents. A quarter, a dime, and 2 pennies? That's 37. Is that enough for a drink? No, it's not enough for a drink. And then these would be like kids that are like 16, 17 years old onward. So I think a lot of the classes today are going downhill, sadly. And that goes back with, with technology being more convenient for everyone. You just look up the answer. You don't have to try and do it yourself. You can just look it up.
Yeah. You have things like Google nowadays to do everything for you. You have the AI on your phone, you just ask the phone, like you got Siri, you have whatever Google's is, Gemini, I think now, or something like that, and you just ask it and it tells you. You don't have to work for it anymore. You don't have to think. You don't have. There's no thinking processes to it anymore. But yeah, for me, the way I think they're failing, I think most of all, over everything fucking else, they're failing in history because if you don't know your past, you can't build a better future. You can't
Mm.
figure out, are we making the same mistakes we did before?
Mm-hmm.
Omitting things, book burning, everything like that is fucking ridiculous. And banning books that are historically factual should not be happening no matter fucking what. No matter which side of the fence you lean on, no matter where you go. Because guess what? If you don't have those references, how the fuck do you know if you're doing something that's already been done before?
Mm-hmm. I agree. You could do them to
Like they're
repeat it if
taking
you
out
don't know about
things.
it.
they're doing things, taking out, like, things about the Holocaust. They're taking that out. It's like, how will people know how the Holocaust actually happened, started, and finished, and got stopped if they don't understand this stuff? And then, COVID happened, and then all of a sudden, everybody started referencing the Holocaust to how they were like treating people, they were like quarantining them, certain things like that. It's like some people said, "Well, I don't get the reference. It's not that bad." It's like segregating people because of this
Mm-hmm.
and keeping them there isolated away from everything outside world. Yes, do we need to quarantine the right way? Sure, but there's no need to place people in certain camps and things like that. Like, I've seen
Yeah.
it during Hurricane Katrina, same thing, FEMA camps. They can kind of go a certain type of way if you don't know the right way to proceed, the right way to handle the situations. So that's why I'm against all this stuff. I think everything that's documented should be documented and should be kept the way it is and not altered, in several different ways. Like, if there's a way to regurgitate it to a simpler mindset, I understand that. There's a reason for that because some people can't comprehend everything. But I don't think they should take it away. No way, shape, or
No.
form should they ever take away the history of this country.
Yeah, I agree. Because it then, like you said, it gives like a poor representation of history when someone, like you said, in certain situations where they do compare it to like, and like your example was Holocaust. A lot of times people will take things and then blow it out of proportion and then say this is just as bad as the Holocaust or this is just as bad as 9/11. You're like, whoa, 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 whoa. Do you know the actual events of what happens? Because this is not comparative to this, and you're blowing it out of proportion or you're misrepresenting it. And like you said, if you don't know your history, then you're doomed to repeat it, essentially. So it's very important to know your history, and regardless of what side you are on, it's 100% valid and okay to disagree with whatever side, but it's still important to know both sides of history.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. All right, we're gonna get one more in before we do a little segue. Let's see here. What's your idea on how the sciences have changed? And what I mean by that is most of the schooling now for sciences, all the sciences, chemistry, biology, like this dissections and things like that, are all technology now. No hands-on learning. Do you think that's a good thing? Do you think that's a bad thing?
No, that's a bad thing for science. Technology is part of science. We all know that. But that's not
Yes.
the whole science. A lot of science is hands on, especially stuff like biology. You know,
Yes.
I think it's good to have hands on experience because then it kind of it connects you in a more intimate sense. Like, you kind of when you experience something hands on, it actually kind of etches into your mind more so than just seeing it through a screen or through like a book. And that's throughout life in general. Example is your first kill is a hunt. You go out, you're hunting deer, and you catch a deer. You actually you kill it. You kind of actually appreciate the value of what that deer is giving you. It's meat, its essence, it's everything you can take from it, and you can actually appreciate it and learn from that experience a lot more than you are to just see it through a screen. So I definitely think it's really bad to just do everything through a screen or even through just books. I think you need to do a bit of everything. As much as I said, like, I don't like to read books, it's still important to read the book. But I think you also need to have hands-on experience.
Yes. I agree with that. So we have a question here. Do you think schools should include multiple perspectives, even controversial ones, and let students think for themselves? That's yes and no.
Mm,
I think they should be told all sides of the story on why. Because sometimes the villain is painted in a bad light because somebody has a different point of view. But for some people, it could be different. And they need to understand why they actually started certain conflicts. They need to understand why there is a debate in the first place.
mhm,
It goes back to, um, let's go World War II,
mhm,
you know, America, Germany, everything like that. Like, how that actually came to be, where it started, what
mhm,
made them make the choices to go to war in the first place. Um, Same thing with what I think about. Same thing with the Civil War,
Hmm.
honestly, since we were talking about slavery, same thing with Civil War. They didn't know all the ins and outs and intricacies of that, so they understand why these people were fighting for that. Because back then, in Civil War, people weren't getting paid to go to war,
No,
so
it's
it's not
just
like nowadays where
that's
you're getting a paycheck.
it's
They were
duty.
fighting
That's
for what they believed in.
hmm
Yeah.
and it was more than just freeing slaves. There was a lot actually. There was the Civil War is very complex. One of the major factors was slavery, yes, but there was a lot of actually things that they wanted to adjust or correct throughout the Civil War.
A lot of it was governing, northern states like, okay, cool, we're making these laws. Southern states were like, we don't have to fucking do that, and we're not going to do that. You're gonna have to force us to do that. So the South wanted their freedom. They wanted to have the right to govern themselves from certain aspects of it. Slavery became a big dictation in that when they realized that they needed more fighters and everything like that. So they did that. So they got more people to their cause, and it just followed through when they won. That's all it was. But yeah, that's one of those things that I think the controversy does need to be, the controversy points need to be told no matter what. So everybody has a better idea across the board and there's no confusion and everybody understands everything and they can have the conversations about it.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And it kind of goes into our First Amendment rights. You know, here in America, at least, we have the freedom of speech. And as much as you, as a person, might disagree with someone else, it's still good to allow the other person to say what they want to say, regardless of how negative or bad it can be. Doesn't mean that it's right, doesn't mean it good in a sense. A lot of things people might say are very, for example, it might be racist people or, neo Nazis. It is their right to say what they want to say, so long as it does not impede on your freedoms and rights. The moment it actually crosses that line, then that's a different story. Then that's when they need to be stopped. But it is good to hear them say it because then you can have conversations with them or with the community and how to debate them, how to show them right from wrong. And then a lot of times you're not going to be able to get through to them, but at least you also know what this person actually thinks as well. And again, like I said, it is not always going to be something you want to hear or something that is right, but it is still something that should be allowed to be said so long it does not impeach or impede on other freedoms and rights. So I agree wholeheartedly that no matter how controversial what they say, they still should be allowed to be said.
Yeah. All right. Boss, you ready? Let's pull up that old merch store. All right, everybody, we got the merch store here. Grab yourself some Join the Raid merch. It's all fun and game. It's all for fun. It's all for joy. Support us if you want to. We got some new beer koozies, stickers. We got some shirts. It's nice, nice, nice. They have some old logo as well. We're getting more stuff made, and yeah, we have sweatshirts, sweaters, hoodies. You know, it's all good stuff. Go ahead and give it. All the merch is just, it's just a way to give back to, us if you like our content. Hopefully, we get some more influx in that. But I think we're gonna do a little bit more things with that starting in 2 weeks. So
Hmm,
it gives us a little bit of time to think about what we want. Gonna have a little surprise for you with that, Savage, by the way, too.
okay. You can say it too. Let us know what you would like to see in the merch store, and we'll look into it as well. It'd be good to hear what people want to see in stores. So a lot of times it's you go into a store and you see stuff, but it's like it isn't like it's not something you want to buy or vibe with, but it'd be cool to see what people actually want, and then we can go from there.
Thanks, boss. Appreciate you. Let's look at COVID to now, how it affected everything. So COVID shut down schools everywhere. Everyone went virtual, and kids face major disruptions in their schedule, in their normal life to life, day to day schedules. So, how do you think this impacted education in the long term, honestly, from that point?
Education wise, I don't know because it's kind of hard to say how education wise, but I know for a fact that social cues and how to like interact in a social environment is definitely affected, in terms of like when you're in school, you learn what kind of things you should and shouldn't do that are accepted in like society in general. And it could be, and it's different for each person too, but also even for like each gender, male and female. Certain things are going to be the norms in society in general. But as a kid, I think they're going to be a lot more. They're going to have a lot more issues interacting with each other, kind of like like an awkwardness to it. Really, a lot of some people are more uncomfortable in groups, like have social anxiety, stuff, things like that. So it's interesting to see because it kind of blew up more with COVID because they just threw it onto kids like that and they didn't give them a chance to adjust. They didn't like say, "Hey, this is what we're going to be doing for a few weeks. Get ready for it," kind of thing. Allow the families to kind of like set up for it. It was just thrown on them, thrusted onto them, and then parents had to figure out how to deal with it in that situation. So I think with like society aspect of things, it's going to be a huge factor going on. Education wise, I haven't really seen like the statistics on it, but it seemed like it definitely hindered their performance because a lot of the times they'd be attending class, but they wouldn't really be paying attention. On the side, they'd be playing Fortnite or watching a movie instead of actually paying attention in class.
Yeah, I can tell you that from my kids' standpoint, they would they would do their schoolwork on their tablets and they'd have their breaks.
Yeah.
And to me, I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Take a break because you're sitting there the whole time, do something, and then they go back to it. And I was like, I mean, there's a tad bit of structure here, but there's not a lot since there's no person actually there. They're looking at a monitor now. So it goes back to that standpoint where I had before, where I was like, they shouldn't have so much screen time like that because they get so used to it. Um, went from that to when they went back to school to going back in classes, they started struggling a little bit because they weren't used to being around kids and everything like that. Like dealing with other kids that wasn't their own family members or people they see every day, like at home. There's a lot of struggles with it. There's a lot of changes with, their demeanors and mannerisms. And things started to alter a little bit. It was a struggle for the first year when they went back to school. Wasn't a bad thing to go back to school like that, but it kind of gave them another culture shock because they weren't used to it because they got so much the habit of being home doing that virtual learning. And then, now they still have that form of virtual learning still while they're in school now. So I don't agree with that because I believe there should be more teachers actually teaching and making, being these people that are engaging with our students and things like that if they have the staff behind it. There's a lot of staff issues with a lot of schools now because of the pay and everything like that. No, not many people want to just be a teacher anymore because there's no financial stability with it a lot, unless they have these nice private schools that have these incentives, or they go teach at a college on the college level, collegiate level, or university level. So there's not a lot of people that want to be a teacher. So it's a thing in my opinion, because I knew people that love teaching and love children and just wanted to teach and just be engaged with them to help them mold them and to mold the next generation to make them better people and get them ready for the world. There's not many people that want that anymore. But let's see here. Cover that. Looking forward. To wrap up, what's one change you'd make to fix public schools today? A big idea or a small tweak? What would you do?
Honestly, I kind of agree with what Bless was saying there is like pay teachers more. A big thing when someone gets paid more, they work harder typically when someone gets paid more. You see that in doctors. One of the main reasons why, someone is a doctor, besides, helping people and all that, when you, as a doctor, you see them coming in with like a Ferrari or something crazy, they get paid a lot of money. This doctor's good
Yeah.
at his job. He is like top of the line doctor. That's the doctor you want. He's not lazy and he's not going to be messing around typically. And there's some, outliers out there, but typically when you pay someone more for their job, they work harder. That even goes for me. When I got a pay raise, I put a little bit more effort into the job because it's getting paid more. So I feel more appreciated for the job. And where it's like, as a doctor, you do see that they don't get paid that much. They get the whole summer to themselves, and they get paid, they get the vacation times like the school, like the kids do. But they're basically teaching the future generations for the country. They're providing the service for the country, and it's very important from preschool all the way to 12th grade. And then, you got college professors, all that. And I definitely agree that I think that they should incentivize the teachers more, even if it's just public schools, so that way they teach their kids better and have a better overall system for the school and a better education for the school.
Okay. Um, for myself, it'd be bring back physical book learning. I know it doesn't help a lot of kids, but I believe that's where this regression and knowledge comes from because they don't have a way to fact check so many things, so many ways to actually learn it, or actually put the whole history book in the damn computers like they should instead of taking it out. That way they can actually see it all and actually read it all for themselves. And they actually, because like I said, my kids, when they're bored, they say, hey, can I go on my computer and look at this history thing or this art thing? So they can actually go back and read it themselves when they feel like doing that. Was a little bit more strict with my children because I told them like video games for weekends and we do outside time, everything like that during the week and weekends. That way they knew that you had to, get to that point. They knew during the school week, they were focused on school and then outside time or, hanging out with me, doing something with me, something like that. There
Good
was no
system,
screen
yep.
time until the weekend. So they knew that the weekend came up. Hey, fucking chill, play games, go outside, do what the fuck you want, be kids.
What about like TV or movies? Like after, say, like, homework's done, you just finished dinner. Would you give them some time to like just relax for like an hour? Watch a
Yeah,
art.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because I believe in tiny rewards here and there just to keep the incentive going that good behavior deserves a reward. So they know that you keep being good, you're gonna get something good for it. So yeah, we did time, movie nights, things like that. Friday nights were usually our movie nights. I know you know this already because you've seen it because you're like, oh, what are you doing? I'm like, movie time with the kids. So we got popcorn, cookies, snacks, everything like that. And we,
Yeah, yeah.
have that. During the week, it just mattered when they finish their homework. I wouldn't reward one without all of them being done with their homework just to make sure that it was equal across the board. So they knew, okay, cool. And two, that's like, I'm a big advocate on if they need help, help them. Don't do it for them, but help guide them. So they
Mm,
all took care of each other. So it's one of those things too.
good system to have.
All right.
Help each other.
Yeah. Yeah. I believe that. I believe that. Like, I believe siblings should always look out for each other in the best intentions, not for selfish reasons. All right. Well, goes us to what's happening next week. Next week, we are going to be covering a little bit of the fucking chaos that's covering this fucking country right now. Like, we're going to be looking at the fucking riots and the reasons behind them and why,
Okay.
and putting our own standpoint on it because y'all are going to kind of be surprised on mine. I already know it, but yeah, we're going to look at the riots, everything going on in LA, everything going on around the country, the peaceful protests, everything like that. And we're going to, say our standpoints a little bit here and there. But yeah, for that, without further ado, I want to thank everybody so much. Thank you so much, Driss, for those gifts and subs. Thank you so much for everybody that showed up on YouTube and Vish. Thank you so much for your questions. And thank you as well, Psychotoker. I know we didn't get to your question, but I'm sorry. But yeah, thank y'all so much. Bye.